Hello everyone, I all hope you had a very wonderful, great day, and very much of a great day indeed, guys. As you can see, guys, it is extremely, superly hot than ever before. But as you know that this weather is so unpredictable, is so completely unpredictable as well. But despite that, guys, I'm superly grateful for you guys viewing and watching my episodes from shorts to long videos. It completely means a lot to me, as in literally means a lot to me. So, guys, I will never forget you all for your greatest support in viewing and also in viewing every day from shorts to long videos as well. So, never exactly able to forget that. So, may God bless you all and keep you all safe. On today's episode, we're to speak about Shadow Boy again, which I already previously spoke about him on the previous weeks or the previous month. I don't know exactly when. And this time we had to continue his story and everything else throughout the Shadow Empire, throughout Shadow Boy's mission and goal, who is a very much of a member of the Universal Heroes who want to restore sacred peace and balance and harmony to the sacred universe and to the sacred world and to planet Earth and to the known worlds and to the known universe and to humanity and to the Shadow Empire as well. So let's begin. Shadow Boy and the rest of the other Shadow Empire warlords and the rest of the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders continued their battle against the evil Shadow Empire warlords and commanders against the evil Shadow Empire warlords and commanders throughout the following years, and by fighting against one of the most powerful, formidable super criminals and villains and dangerous obstacles and dangerous deadly obstacles of powerful, mysterious adversaries and enemies across the sacred world and across the known worlds and across the known universe and throughout the sacred universe as well. Despite this, Shadow Boy is very quietly determined and very quietly determined and very quietly determined and very devoted to changing the Shadow Empire's ways and also its destructive nature to rather using its resources for the greater good than not for the greater evil. Despite this, he and the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders joined forces with the Intergalactic Coalition in aiding them on their respective goals to liberating thousands of worlds and planets and civilization that are under excuse me that are under the sole control of the Shadow Empire and of the ancient secret societies of supervillains and also the ancient secret societies of supervillains as well in order to liberate them from the control of the ancient groups of secret society of supervillains as well in a process in order to restoring hope, balance and positivity to the sacred world and to the rest of the sacred universe and to the supernatural and alien and superhuman communities and the Four Nation Hunters as well by restoring peace and harmony and balance towards the communities of the Four Nation Hunters, supernaturals, aliens, superhumans, and the Shadow Empire warlords, commanders, druids, witches, faithful, and all other living, remarkable creatures of the sacred world and of the rest of sacred existence, which Shadow Boy is willing to use the Shadow Empire's resources for the greater good than not for the greater evil, which he believes which he believes that the Shadow Empire's ways can change in a very much miraculous and beautiful, glorious ways, which he has started to begin his mission already. On the 15th of January, Shadow Boy and the rest of the Shadow Empire and the rest of the Shadow Empire warlords resistance fought up against a battle of the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders on other known worlds that are across the known universes. The battle lasted for days and for days and for days and for days until the other Shadow Empire warlords were forced to withdraw from the battle. Their battle cruisers were heavily decimated from the battlefield, and Shadow Boy and the rest of the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders remained victorious until on the 29th of January as well. On the 9th of February, Shadow Boy secretly convened with the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders on the other sacred basis of operation, where he was able to tell them that the Intergalactic Coalition appreciates the information and also the intelligence that were quickly able to provide and also assist to their greater cause, which means in other words they can easily challenge the Shadow Empire commander, current leader, known as Red Bolt, who's quietly using the Shadow Empire's resources in order to further his ultimate plans and goals for universal domination and for sacred domination as well in the process. The Shadow Empire warlords and commanders told Shadow Boy that the Dark Order and Red Bolt and the Star Prince and Dark Star and the Star Empire have now formed a formidable secretive alliances to aid each other on their respective goals and mission to end and annihilate the intergalactic coalition and the universal heroes and the united heroes in the process. Shadow Boy was exactly quietly not shocked or rather spooked that Red Bolt and the Dark Order and Dark Star and the Star Prince and the original Shadow Empire would have eventually formed secretive alliances to aid each other on their respective goals to fight against their common enemy. Shadow Boy told the rest of the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders that it's time for them to take the fight to the enemy by any means necessary. On the 15th of February, Shadow Boy met up with the members of the Four Nation Hunter Intergalactic Coalition in order for them to explain their movements and their plans and geological plans. The Four Nation Hunter elders of the Intergalactic Coalition told Shadow Boy that the resources are already quietly stretched too thin and that there's nothing they can do at the probable time in order to stop the war in the battlefield before it's completely waged on. And the Shadow Empire, with its unlimited resources that are able to be used in order to combining them with the Star Empire, has now created a massive force of a secretive dark armada that is on the verge of destroying and laying waste to many magical worlds and planets and civilization. The Intergalactic Coalition's resources are stretched too thin in order for them to deal with the imminent threat that is slowly rising in power. Shadow Boy told the members of the Four Nation Hunters of the Intergalactic Coalition they have to do everything in their power to stop this dangerous threat. Otherwise, if they don't, it will soon consume and destroy everything in its path. And they all agreed to that, one way or another. On the 20th of March, Shadow Boy began accessing the ancient secretive archives in order to learn more about a powerful ancient super villain known as the King of Darkness, who had the power and the ability of manipulating darkness and shadow at will during ancient times when the original Lord of Magic was in power and in control of the Shadow Empire during those ancient times. He discovered that the King of Darkness was heavily still actively alive and that his death was just nothing but a rumor in order to make sure that his followers carry out his mission and his legacy in full secrecy. Despite that, Shadow Boy continued to focus his new objective and his mission in liberating thousands of worlds and planets throughout the known worlds and throughout the rest of the sacred universe and also the other worlds and civilization in the process as well. On the 15th of April, Shadow Boy and the rest of the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders entered the Star Universe, where they discovered that thousands of battleships and battle cruisers and an armada of a highly advanced airship fleet were headed on a destructive invasion approach in order to destroy many worlds and many civilizations. Shadow Boy told the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders that this is the only chance to prevent a war this is the only chance to prevent a soul destruction and a very, very powerful destruction that is literally headed toward the sacred universe and the rest of sacred existence, meaning it's time for them to act up by any means necessary. On the 20th of May, the Shadow Empire warlords and Shadow Boy gathered the rest of the resistance forces from the pirates, from the aliens, from the supernaturals of the werewolves, warlocks, witches, druids, and any other ordinary warlord in order to assist them with a full armada of battleships and warships, with a full armada of battleships and warships and airship fleet, and that they command. And they began creating a resistance front in order to fight up against the Star Empire's heavily armed armada that is headed on a destructive approach towards the known worlds, which the battle will start to begin. On the 20th of June, the great battle known as the Great Confrontation Battle between the Star and the Shadow Empire began on the on the middle sector of the known universe were a huge fleet of battleships and battle cruisers and an armada of airship fleet against the Shadow Empire airship fleet against the Shadow Empire resistance force of the battleships and battle cruisers were headed in order to prevent an all-out war, which was exactly began taking place. Shadow Boy led the armada, and then they began fighting up against the Star Empire's armada and fleet, which the battle lasted for days and for days and for days until the 9th of July. Until the 9th of July, the resistance force remained victorious in vanquishing the Star Empire's forces and fleet. They managed to capture several and major enemies during the battle. All the star warlords and commanders were ultimately sentenced into custody directly into the Astral Prison for their crimes against the sacred universe and against the sacred world, which the Astral Prison is designed to house super criminals and super villains and rogue evil warlords and warlocks and druids and witches and fairies and powerful bad creatures and evil creatures and beings who do very much bad evil stuff and evil stuff and criminal stuff against the rest of humanity and against the rest of the sacred world and the rest of the sacred universe as well. Despite this, Shadow Boy continued to interrogate the Star warlords and commanders, and completely the only response they were able to give him is that the Star and the Star Prince and the current leader of the Shadow Empire have formed a formidable alliance, which that their resources and everything else have been used for the greater evil rather than for the greater good. And Shadow Boy was not completely happy with that. On the 29th of June, Shadow Boy completely convened with the members of the Universal Heroes on the central headquarters of the asteroid base, where they were able to speak about their plans into liberating many more worlds and planets. Universal Man told Shadow Boy that the Universal Heroes' resources are stretched too thin, while the other members of the Universal Heroes are doing their part in protecting planet Earth and the rest of humanity from the other forces of evil, while the other part of their team are doing all they can in order to keep the other destructive forces of evil at bay, which is a battlefield and being attacked from all sizes. Despite this, Shadow Boy told Universal Man that he has already formed a powerful resistance force of the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders to aid him in liberating many more worlds and many more planets in the process, which they'll be able to continue to do so. Universal Man told Shadow Boy that the resources of the Universal Heroes are for him and his people to use as well, and that they'll also be as used as backup if he need any help or any intelligence gathering. And they shook hands as well as they did, and Shadow Boy completely appreciated the support of Universal Man and the rest of his team as well. On the 20th of July, the Liberation Resistance Front of the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders with Shadow Boy managed to liberate thousands of worlds and planets and civilizations in one fell swoop, which in other words removed the grip of the Shadow Empire, that's been pressed and tightened on for many centuries across thousands of known worlds and magical worlds and civilization. In a process to do this, Shadow Boy and the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders remain victorious as they were able to win the battle and the war against the evil Shadow Empire warlords and commanders in the process as well. On the 15th of August, Shadow Boy completely attended a meeting of the Four Nation Hunter members of the Intergalactic Coalition, where they were able to tell Shadow Boy that he and his forces have done a miraculous greater job in liberating thousands of worlds and planets, but in doing so, he has managed to get the unwanted attention from dangerous ancient groups of evil or ancient groups of powerful supervillains who are now willing in order to hunt him down and take him out. Shadow Boy reassured the members of the Intergalactic Coalition that with the help of the other Shadow Empire warlords and the other members of the United Heroes resources, they can easily take them down and wipe them out completely. The member of the Four Nation Elder of the Intergalactic Coalition warned Shadow Boy to never underestimate these ancient secretive groups of shadowy organization of supervillains such as the Order of the Five, the Order of the Six, the Order of the Seven, the Founders, the Court of Nature, Unholy Alliance, Sacred Five, the Galactic Sacred Path, the Galactic, and also the Sacred Circle, and also the Sacred Circle and the Order of the Four, and the Order of Power, and the Order of Death. To never underestimate these ancient groups, these ancient shadowy organization groups of supervillains, because they are too deadly powerful and are very, very much too devastatingly powerful. They possess so much influence and more powerful resources throughout the sacred criminal underworld. And that's what exactly what Shadow Boy completely agreed that that's exactly what he's going to do in order to move that influence and use that influence against those powerful groups and attack them with their own firepower and their own medicine as well in a process. On the 29th of September, on the 29th of September, Shadow Boy and the rest of the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders began straightly headed to the ancient ruins of the ancient crystal worlds and planets, which they were unaware that they were about to be ambushed by a group of powerful, deadly mercenaries of assassins who were quietly hired in order to wipe out Shadow Boy and to completely remove him out of the way. Despite this, the assassins and the super villains revealed themselves from the shadows and told Shadow Boy that this is the end of the road for him and his resistance plans, which has caused too much greater interference from the master's plans and their goals to be able to bear fruit, and that this is the perfect time to specifically wipe them out. Green Man, who's a very of a supervillain and a greater strategist and a tactician, and also an associate of the ancient groups of supervillains, told Shadow Boy that the masters from above and also from below wanted him dead. They had enough of his interference, and it is time for him to be wiped out. The assassins were heavily equipped with destructive, compatible Shadow Empire technology, ready to wipe out Shadow Boy and the rest of the other Shadow Empire. Shadow Boy told his troops and his forces to marshal up and to deal with the threat, which the battle completely lost it, and Green Man completely disappeared within a battle. Shadow Boy and the rest of the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders managed to capture several key enemies and managed to defeat them, and they remain victorious, and they are ultimately sending them straightly into the Astral Prison to remain in custody for their crimes as well. On the 20th of October, Shadow Boy convened with the members of the United Heroes on the central headquarters of their base and told them that these ancient groups are becoming very, very quietly too aggressive, and they are well aware of their plans and their strategy, meaning in other words, they have to take the fight to them. The members of the United Heroes completely agreed that the United Heroes are doing everything else they can in their power in the public front to protecting mankind from all threats from the sacred world and from the known universe and from the rest of sacred existence, especially from the sacred galactic war, which has taken a dark turn. Shadow Boy told the members of the United Heroes that what they're doing isn't enough in order to prevent all out wars and battles that have been manipulated from the most powerful enemies who are working behind the shadows in order to orchestrating events to their advantage, which are using it to further their own plans and their own goals in the process. And despite this is not quite their good enough operation, which they need to utilize every resources and everything else they can in order to stopping these foes and these enemies with every ability they can possibly be able to do. The members of the United Heroes completely agreed, and that is exactly what they wanted to do as well. On the 15th of November, the superhuman race went out on a freaking rampage that created destruction across the other alien worlds, that created destruction and chaos among the other alien worlds, which broke out a war between aliens and superhumans. Shadow Boy and the rest of the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders were forced to intervene in order to stop the battle and the friction between the two communities, which they gladly exactly did in a nick of time as well by preventing the two sides from waging war. The superhuman race told Shadow Boy that the rest of their kind had been threatened to be annihilated and to be extinct by the new Lord of Magic, and they blaming it on the alien species. Shadow Boy told the rest of the two communities to join forces rather than to fight against each other, because right now the enemy is using that in order to create turmoil and confusion amongst themselves, which they're secretly benefiting from that. the superhuman race completely agreed that they'll never join forces with the alien race and they'll rather side with themselves, and so did the alien. And Shadow Boy began to see that the rift among the supernatural community and the alien community and the alien community and the superhuman community has begun to fracture in a very much of a difficult way as well. On the 20th of December, Shadow Boy completely met up with the representative of the Four Nation Hunters and told them that they need to do everything in their power and their ability to restore the peace between the supernatural and the alien and the superhuman community, which has been fractured and been destroyed from the inside and out. And the Four Nation Hunters began agreeing with Shadow Boy. That's exactly what they went to do as well. On the 19th of January, Shadow Boy and the rest of the Four Nation Hunters attended a secretive conference meeting with the supernatural representative and with the alien representative and the superhuman representative, which began speaking out their grievances, stating that the war between good and evil has created nothing but an all-out chaos, which was brought by the universal heroes who exactly killed the original Lord of Magic, which created an all-out chaos and a power vacuum throughout the Shadow Empire, which forces every good, which all the forces of good and evil have been forced to clash with in fighting against each other for sole control over the rest of sacred existence. Shadow Boy told the members of each the respective members of the communities that they're willing to do everything in their power, in their disposable power and their ability to restoring the peace and balance and harmony that once existed many centuries ago between the supernaturals and the aliens and the superhumans by destroying their greatest and most powerful ancient enemy, the new Lord of Magic, known as Lord Jet, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to take down his plans before they can successfully bear fruit. In other words, they have to work together to stop their common enemy, and they all agreed to that as well. On the 20th of February, Shadow Boy met up with the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders and told them that it's time for them to move up with a resistance front and everything else, and it's time for them to take the lead, that the universal heroes will aid them in their respective goals in liberating many more worlds and planets in the process, which is exactly what they have to do. And they all agreed to that as well, that it's time for them to pick up the pace and begin the liberation front by any means necessary. Despite this, guys, Shadow Boy is solely devoted in changing the ways of the Shadow Empire's destructive and darkest ways for the greater good, because he believes that the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders can change their ways, and is willing to do just about that. And he's willing to utilize the resources of the Shadow Empire, using them for the greater good rather than for the greater evil. Despite that, he's a very, very, very loyal member of the Universal Heroes, and he's very loyal to the Universal Heroes, and he believes in their goal and as well the objectivity in restoring peace and balance to the sacred world and to humanity and to planet Earth and to the known universe and to the known worlds and to the sacred universe as well in the process. He's very skilled in strategist, tactician, in leadership, and also in forming his own resistance front, maintaining his usual bases of operations such as his central headquarters, which are ancient caves and ancient ruins, where he can convene and meet with the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders in full secrecy. Very skilled in swordsmanship, hand-to-hand combat, guns, weapons, guns, daggers, guns and daggers and blades and weapons under his sole control. Marksmanship, leadership skills, super strength, super speed, the power to disappear and reappear at will from shadows as well, and super hearing and super sight as well. He's very, very courageous and very devoted to his people and to the Universal Heroes, willing to make sure that they two worlds coexist together by fighting up against their greatest and most powerful, formidable enemy, such as Golden Knight, the Order of the Five, the Order of Power, and the Order of the 12, the Universal Prince, and the founders of Sacred Circle, the Galactic, and stopping the new Lord of Magic from rising and ascending in power before he can use all that power to annihilate and wipe out the supernaturals, aliens, and the superhumans in the process, and the Four Nation Hunters, so that his kind and his species can have sole dominance and sole control over the sacred universe and over the sacred world and over the other universes. Despite this, Shadow Boy and the rest of the other Shadow Empire warlords and commanders have managed to put up a greater fight against the evil Shadow Empire warlords and commanders throughout the following years, and are willing to do so by any means necessary. He's very fearless, very devoted, very ambitious, and very kind, loyal, so compassionate. He believes that people can change and is willing to do whatever he can to protecting humanity and the rest of his kind and his people in changing their destructive ways and using the good ways and the resources for the greater good rather than for the greater evil. Despite this, Shadow Boy believes that the ancient evil known as the Fallen and the King of Darkness are still actively alive, and he believes that they'll soon one day return to create chaos and destruction upon his wake, which is why he formed the Resistance Front in order to stop these ancient threats from returning and also from coming back to creating chaos and destruction upon its wake. Despite this, he views the universal heroes as brothers and sisters and is willing to work with them in order to further their common interest for peace, balance, and harmony towards humanity, towards planet Earth, and towards the sacred world, and towards the rest of the sacred universe. And he views the 4 hunters as brothers and sisters as well, to aiding them on their sacred, holy mission to restoring sacred peace and balance to the supernatural community, to the alien community, and to the superhuman community as well. Despite this, he's very courageous, very loving, very caring. He admires his people and is willing to protect them and is willing to do whatever it takes to change their ways for the greater good than rather for the greater evil. He's very intelligent, smart, caring, compassionate, loving, devoted, strong-willed, and very, 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 very loving towards the Shadow Empire warlords and their people, towards the Shadow Empire warlords and commanders. He believes they can change and is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that that change bears fruit, no matter what. Well, guys, that's it for today's episode. As you can see, I have to exactly hit the road, but I will successfully see you tomorrow as well. Like and subscribe as well. Take care of yourself. Have a wonderful, blessed day and a very great day indeed. May God look after you and protect you from all things as well. Appreciate your support in viewing and subscribing my channel and subscribing my channel and viewing and watching my episodes. Keep doing that. Appreciate it. God bless you all. Take care of yourself. Have a wonderful, great day. Bye.